And welcome to the special simulcast of the Neil Haley Show and celebrity interviews live from the Grotto with Greg Hanna. Greg, what's going on, man? How are you?
Hey, I'm doing great, Neil. How are you?
Fantastic. And our guest today is James Urbaniak. James, thanks for stopping by. We're going to talk about a new project, but I want to kind of delve into your whole career because it's amazing. Did it start out as a comedian with you?
No, I didn't start out doing stand-up, but I started out doing theater downtown in New York back in the day, and uh, there was some crossover with comedy back then, but it was pretty much straight acting. And then I moved to LA, and it's been sort of a steady diet of film and TV, and then these scripted podcasts, which are so much fun and kind of a throwback to old-time radio when you think about it.
Yeah, I can't wait to go into that because
Yeah, they're
I
very cool.
love where I love where podcasts are going. Greg and I have been doing our podcast for X amount of years now.
Yeah,
And I've done so many podcasts. 15 years, James, I've been doing this podcasting, and I've done over
yeah,
15,000 plus interviews.
incredible.
So, and where we're seeing the genre of voice only podcasts, I spend my time listening to podcasts. So, Greg, are you seeing more and more that you're kind of going back to that kind of genre of listening to things, Greg, as well, while you're maybe traveling and commute so you can pick what you want to listen to versus having to? And I'm going to ask that question, Greg, and then James will jump to you.
Yeah, sure. That's no
Well,
problem.
yeah.
I get into that real quick. Being the age that I am, I only listen to audio, right? So cassettes was where I started off in the car at Automobile University. And that's just continued, iPod and now, streaming while I'm, audio while I'm working out or just listening or just working in the background. So I'm always listening to something, rarely looking at anything unless I'm binge watching a show with my wife. Yeah.
So I can't wait to get that scripted thing. And so, James, when you think about your career, starting out in theater, how did you get into the stand up thing?
Oh, well,
If
I've never done stand-up. I'm not a stand-up.
yeah,
Someone on your research team
really? Oh, no comedian
gilding the
ever?
lily.
Really? Is that on
No,
that?
no, but I'm friends with a lot of people who do improv. And although I don't have that training, I have done like improv comedy podcasts, and I've done a little improv on stage in LA with people that are friends of mine who invited me on. I'm sort of an amateur improv guy. But I admire stand-ups, but I've never actually stood in front of a mic by myself.
Really? It
Although,
never. Oh, yeah.
well, once in New York, I was in a one-man show, but that was completely scripted. So,
See, that's what happens showing up in Wikipedia or AI. So I apologize, and I'll edit
oh
that.
no, it's all good.
No, no,
This has
because
happened
I'm
before.
really
I'd
okay.
like to think that I'm a funny guy, so sometimes I'm identified as a stand-up, but I don't actually have that background. But I'll take it. Print the legend, as they used to say.
Good, great.
Well, let me ask you a question, James. So you played some incredibly smart and eccentric characters. If you had to assemble the genius squad from all of the roles that you played, who would make the cut?
Oh my God. Well, the thing that kind of broke me in terms of making a living at this was a sort of cult movie, an independent movie from the 90s called Henry Fool, directed by a guy named Hal Hartley. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Hal Hartley. He's
Not
out of New York. He's like a cult filmmaker, really talented. But that was sort of my first thing that I got some attention for because that movie came out and stuff. And that guy was a quintessential James Urbaniak character. He was a sort of introverted. By the way, this is acting because, as you can tell, I'm kind of a chatty extrovert.
Yeah.
But this character was a sort of introverted guy who ended up becoming sort of a famous poet. Um, so I put him on the team because he's got a good brain. He thinks creatively. Now, I played Robert Crumb, the famous underground cartoonist, in a movie called American Splendor.
Mhm.
Probably put him on there because he's got a very specific point of view. He's also a good artist, so he could probably do some suspect sketches if we're seeking out a bad guy. And I guess the other one I'd put on is I was on a kind of beloved show called Review on Comedy Central, where I played a sort of nefarious TV producer who sort of pushed the boundaries of ethics and morality. And you probably need a guy who thinks like that on your super team. Character named
Wow.
Grant. Yeah,
Wow.
so yeah, it's funny. I have played a lot of these sort of slightly malevolent mad geniuses for some reason. Although I'm just a nice regular guy in real life.
And when you think about your theater training, how's that different compared to just being on in film, on film?
Yeah, I mean, like theater and film both, you're kind of trying to do the same thing as an actor, but they're both produced very differently and they're structured very differently. You know, in a play you rehearse for maybe 4 weeks and you kind of run the whole play repeatedly after a period in rehearsal. And then in a movie, you show up and you're just shooting like a little incremental part each day, just a few minutes of footage each day. But because you have a whole day to do that, you have kind of a whole day to work on those small parts and try to make them land. So you're kind of doing the same thing that just the structures are radically different, Theater is, I kind of think of theater as sort of horizontally structured and film is vertically structured, if that makes any sense. But I love them both. And actually, I hadn't done plays in a long time, but this past year I've sort of fallen back in the theater. I did a couple plays last year, and I'm actually doing a play in going to start a play in about a week here in California. So it's good because it kind of gets you, because you're using sort of different muscles when you do theater that are kind of different than what you use on film, and it's good to get in touch with that stuff.
Well, you mentioned malevolent characters that you do a lot of. So that made me think, Spectre, Skeletor. If you could pick any animated show, past or present, to guest star in as a totally ridiculous character,
Oh my
what
gosh.
show would it be and what kind of character? I'm gonna guess
Well,
malevolent.
I'd have to go back to my youth when I was, because I'm an oldie too, Greg. And I'd say some of the classic stuff from my youth, like Johnny Quest, the old, because for years I was on an Adult Swim show called Venture Brothers, which was sort of an homage, sort of satirical homage to Johnny Quest. But I'd love to go back to the real days of doing gosh, anybody, some bad guy in that. Also, I noticed like a lot of kid shows when I was young, the voice actors would all sound middle-aged for some odd reason. Uh, like in the 70s, there was like a Jaws shark, a cartoon shark named Jabberjaw, but the guy who played it sounded like he was 55. Hey, I'm Jabberjaw. So I'd also like to go back at a time where old guys were the voices of Saturday morning cartoon characters. I'm not sure why that was, but trying to bring
That's a
that
good
back.
point. I'm gonna have to go look some up on YouTube now.
Yeah, yeah.
Remember.
When I think about things, James, how old are you when you're saying your age?
I am 61, sir.
You do not look 61.
Well, thanks. I appreciate that. We have good hair in my family. My dad's 91, God bless him. He's still got a fairly good head of hair. And it's
Fantastic.
only partially gray. So, but yeah, I was a kid in the 70s during that era.
Okay. I'm an 80s kid. I'm 52.
Yeah,
So
there you go.
yeah,
You're
yeah.
catching up on me, though. You're catching
No,
up.
no, yeah, yeah, I'm getting there. And I don't care. And like I said, age doesn't matter. It's a mindset. It's what you feel, how old you feel, the passion,
Totally.
what you're doing, your projects and things like that. What do you think you're most known for, James?
Oh gosh. Well, definitely the Venture Brothers, which again, I do a lot of sort of cult stuff. I do a lot of stuff where the audience might be somewhat finite, but they're extremely devoted. Uh, so the Venture Brothers is an Adult Swim show that actually premiered over 20 years ago. And there was often a long time between seasons. There were 7 seasons, and then there was a sort of finale movie that we made. So there's that. But then recently I've been in some more high profile stuff. I have a part in Oppenheimer. I have a part in Steven Spielberg's The Fablemans, his sort of biopic about himself. Uh, and then just kind of plugging along, there's a sitcom called Difficult People. Uh, I had a little part on The Office. I played a kind of crazy guy named Rolf, who was Dwight's best friend, who sort of showed up in a few episodes. Sort of Dwight's id. He sort of out Dwight's Dwight. Another difficult, sort of malevolent character, if you will. But
And
I've
you
been
know
sort of plugging
then
along
the
as like a
Office
working.
fans, they will go back and it's just like getting one part in Seinfeld or The Office. You'll never be forgotten.
Oh,
You
forget
know that?
about it. I actually, you probably heard about this. There's a convention. There's like an office convention where they have actors from the show up and fans show up. And I actually was offered to be at their next convention, but I'm actually going to be traveling at that time
Oh,
and I
when is
can't do it,
that?
but I'll
Where is
probably
that?
do
Where
that in
is
the
that
future.
convention? Where is that
I think
convention at?
the next one I think is in New Jersey at the Meadowlands.
Oh, really? Oh,
And
wow.
yeah, and I was actually invited to go just because I played this little guy who was in a couple episodes. I can't make this one, but I'll probably go to the next one. But when you're on a show that's as iconic as that, I also did an episode of in the last season of Better Call Saul. And when
Yeah.
you're on these sort of iconic shows, people do recognize you and remember these, even peripheral characters, which is super fun.
And
That's
Greg, they say
amazing.
thank goodness because then they can always go and do autograph signings and when they're not working, right?
Yeah,
And
but
go and
yeah.
meet your fans.
And I do those now and then. But yeah, I'm sort of one of those that guys actors where I show up in TV and films and people are like, oh, that guy. I've seen him before. Might not have my name at the tip of their tongue, but
Well,
they,
I'm gonna have to go through The Office on Peacock and then go figure out what episodes and go watch that episode. I'm
there you
such a
go.
huge fan of The Office, and and it goes, I guess, I wonder if the Office idea came from Office Space because that was one of the most iconic movies.
Well,
Yeah,
Office Space is a masterpiece. Well, I think everybody relates to that. I mean, before I made a living at this, I put in a lot of time temping. That was my day job in New York. And so I worked at all kinds of offices. I saw every character. Milton, the kind of nutty guy in
yeah.
Office Space, the sort of
I
office
believe you have my
weirdo.
stapler. Yeah, my stapler.
I
Yeah.
knew more than one Milton in my day. That's a real kind of guy. They're lifers at these
Yeah.
companies. They don't have big positions, and they're the kind of guys I would play, frankly. But
Now
yeah,
you
I knew a couple of Miltons in my day and all those other types. And even if you don't work in an office per se, everybody knows the workplace or what that's like. Even today, when we're all sort of at home, you're still communicating with different people. And I think people relate to that very much, the sort of work environment
I
and the
don't miss The
characters.
Office at all, James.
Neither do I.
I worked at the Credit Bureau of Columbus doing customer service for credit reports for mortgage companies and doing customer service and
Oh,
having
yeah.
to go call the places. I don't wish those days ever on me ever again.
No, I used to.
Yeah, go.
No, I was before I made a living at this, sort of in the early 90s, I would put on my tie and I was with several temp agencies and that's what you had to do back then. But I was happy to do it. I was in New York. The theater I was doing back then was like low budget, so none of us were making any money, so we all had day jobs unless there were a couple of rich kids, but most of us had to work.
Well, back to the Venture Bros, James.
Oh
So
yeah,
Dr. Venture had some really cool one-liners. Are there any
he
one-liners that
does.
you still say in your regular life?
Yeah, I actually some of my favorite quotes are not necessarily Dr. Venture lines, but I mean that show was such a witty show. The writing was so great. One of my favorite lines was so the title characters are two brothers who are the sons who are my sons. They're like teens, and they're twins. And then it turns out they're clones, but we learn about that later. But at one point, the one of the twins is saying to the other twin, "Listen to me, I'm your older brother." He's giving him advice, and the younger guy says, "By 5 minutes." And the older brother says, "Yeah, well, maybe in 5 minutes you'll understand," which is, I think, a classic
That's
Venture
funny.
Brothers line. Yeah. And then, yeah, Dr. Venture, there's one where he's having a yard sale and he's selling all his scientific gizmos. But there's one thing he doesn't want to give away with, and someone picks up this object and he says, "Nobody gets the shrink ray," which is one of my favorites. Yeah. I didn't mean to sell my shrink ray. But if you don't know that show, it's really good. It's still out there. You can find it online. And it's got a very beloved sort of audience. That's the main show I talk about when I go to cons and stuff and do signings.
It sounds like Greg,
Because
you're a fan of this. You were a fan of watching that.
there's
I've
always
seen a
one.
few. I
Yeah,
feel like I want to go binge watch it now.
yeah. There's
That's the
always
cool thing. You always can. Yeah.
whenever I work, I do a lot of TV acting, regular on camera acting. And almost every set I'm on, someone will come up to me and go, I'm a big fan of the Venture Brothers. So it's that kind. It's sort of the show where people either love it or they don't know it. There's
I'll
hardly
have
any in between,
I'll have
but
to add it to my list.
it's a
And
great
Greg,
show.
did you see Oppenheimer? Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Oh, that was
Yeah.
amazing. That was I love I'm a historian, and it was just such a great movie. That must
Oh
have been
yeah.
really fun to work on.
That was amazing. I played like a colleague of Einstein's, and but I show up in a scene where Oppenheimer comes by. So I'm in a scene with Oppenheimer and Einstein, which is pretty cool. And that was an amazing thing to be a part of, to be a part of something that was that much of an event, you know.
Yeah.
But like every freaking character actor in LA and New York was in that. Every dude anyway. But you kind of had to be in it.
All right,
So what
so I'm
was
gonna
it like? I was
go
going to
ahead.
ask you, what was it like voicing Heinrich Himmler when you did that one in The
Oh, well,
Conjuring?
that was an on-camera role. That's a movie called Condor's Nest
Okay.
by a director named Phil Blattenberger. It's like an independent film, and it's a historical drama that sort of does an alt history thing. So basically, Himmler in real life, uh, uh, killed himself like a lot of the Nazis did after after they lost World War II. But in this old history, he's hiding out in South America, which some of the Nazis did do. And there's movies about that. There's a movie called Boys from Brazil. So it's sort of taking a page from that story. And an American GI goes back to South America to find some Nazis. And I'm Himmler. But that was a fascinating thing because the director wanted those of us who were playing the Germans to speak German. And I'd never spoken German, but I had like 2 months to prepare. And then I basically learned conversational German, got good enough. I sort of learned tourist German, which
Yeah.
if you put in a little bit a day, on a language app, you can do it. And then it was just a thing of learning some new words and then committing.
Yeah.
That's the thing, especially in acting. If you're not sure, just don't let them know you're nervous, just commit. But there are these scenes of me spouting German. And they sound good to me. I'm sure to a real German, they're like, good college try, James. But for most of us here in the States, I think I pulled it off. It's funny, I actually have one of my brothers-in-law is a German dude, great guy. So I actually like went over it with him before I shot. I like read the lines to him over Zoom. And he gave me some tips and was very helpful. And he was very supportive. But yeah, that was fascinating. But that's the kind of thing that you get to do sometimes as an actor is you get into areas that you're completely unfamiliar with. Like you got to speak
Absolutely.
German,
Your,
which was cool.
your skills are unbelievable. But let's go into this latest project. We started out with podcasting. I
Indeed.
love podcasting. I'm sure if continued success of you doing some of these podcasts, you'll end up at a podcasting convention. I need to go to one. I've never been to one, and I might create my own event for a
Yeah.
podcast event at one point. But tell us about In Media Res and how this developed.
Yeah. This is a show. It's a scripted show, and it's part of this new tradition of online drama, kind of a throwback to the old days. Before television, sitcoms, dramas were all on the radio. It was all
Yeah.
audio.
Mhm.
And there's been a revival of that in the last decade or so because of podcasts and stuff, and there's an audience for it. So it's one of those shows. It's a Hollywood satire, sort of. It's all fiction. So in the universe of the show, there's a sort of James Bond type movie movie character that's like James Bond has been around for decades. And every few years, a la Bond, there's a new guy playing this super spy dude. So it's about a young actor who is chosen as the new guy for this new super movie spy. And then the complications that come with that in his life. He's sort of being plucked from relative obscurity to play this guy. How does that affect his friends and family? How does that affect him? And then you've got all the people who either love or hate the idea, the emotional navigating that he has to do. So that's what it's about, and it's written with this sort of very funny, sort of satirical point of view, but it also does something great, which is the characters have real dimension, and there's actually like a genuine emotional life to the characters. And as the episodes go on, you sort of get drawn into the emotions of the characters. And then my part is a fun part where I'm a sort of adjacent character who at the end of the episodes, is my bit. I'm sort of unrelated to the main story, but I play a sort of NPR style music host, DJ. And the device is that, like the James Bond movies, there's a history of title songs, themes. And so I have a little show within the show where I play this DJ who's playing the different James Bond themes. And then the creator of the show and director of the show, Rachel Music, is actually a musician and a singer. So she produced and sings on a lot of these tracks, which are sort of parodies of different styles of music dating from like the 60s to the present. And that's super fun. So I get to kind of put on my DJ cap. And it's that cool kind of knows a lot about the stuff, talks a lot, NPR type DJ. So I play one of those guys. And it just adds to the texture of the show, the sort of the reality that we're creating, that we have this history of songs from the show. So each episode ends with a song and me introducing it.
All right. So give me your NPR voice. Go ahead.
I think I'm it's kind of like this. He takes these sort of pauses when he's telling you this information. And this was made, and I'm sounding a little like Casey Kasem now that I think about it.
Casey Kasem, that's right.
I think it's like a more chill Casey Kasem. Because Casey Kasem had that classic cadence where he's giving you information in a clear voice. But I think the NPR thing is they want it to sound more like, I'm just a guy talking to you.
Exactly.
Hey, here's this song. It was made in the 60s. You know who's great at this is jazz guys. I'm kind of into old jazz. You listen to jazz stations. These guys are like, and Bix Beiderbecke recorded this on March 5th, 1952 at 1922 at 2 in the morning. And the other guys on and Joey Smith played, they know all these facts, you know. And the listeners are into this stuff. You're like, yes, tell me more about this
100%.
So 75 years ago.
Yeah. So I'm going to give you my voice. And it always reminded me of the Howard Stern movie for one reason, because I started out at 88.3 WRCT. I did not go to Carnegie Mellon. I wasn't smart enough to go to Carnegie Mellon. Or at that time, I'm not smart enough. Right now, I could attend
Carnegie Mellon. Pennsylvania.
In that Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Yes. WRCT started on a college radio station where I got thrown off because I kept I was supposed to do an educational show. Remember, it's like NPR. Can't promote anything. Well, I started throwing guests on. And then I said, it's all education related. And I ended up having to go in with to the boss and saying, you can't keep doing the show anymore, Neil. How is this educational about someone marketing something for safety belts or marketing this? I'm like, they're interesting guests. No, it has to be education. Everything I do is education. No, exactly. It has to be with no promotion. There's no promotion. So it was kind of an interesting thing. So I had to go to just a straight education talk show after that. But that's how everything started 15 years ago on WRCT.
That's fantastic.
You're listening to WRCT 88.3 FM. That's how I had to do it. And we're streaming live on WRCT.org. And that was it. And then I finally got thrown off. They said, you don't belong. I'm like, okay, thank you. Appreciate it. But you gave me the chops. But I'm on I also have a public access station in the Pittsburgh area I'm on. And somehow this guy gets away with it and lets promotion on a cable access TV station.
Sure.
So I kind of am the Wayne's World mix / this in my story. It's so many ways to where I am today. And, and I hope radio never dies. We're talking about podcasting, that we got to bring back radio. And I think the way I'm a mix of radio, podcasting, and TV is really a good thing compared to everyone just going into this, I'm only going to do it this way in a podcast, and it has to be a specific way. Because if you kind of pigeonhole yourself, guess what? The newspaper industry will be out of popularity, but in maybe 20 years will be back. People want to feel the newspaper. Never know.
And there's something interesting. There's something kind of intimate about radio, because you start to have a relationship with these hosts, and that still exists to a degree. But yeah, I'm also totally of the generation that grew up listening to radio, and I would listen to everything. DJs.
Yeah.
but also like talk radio.
Me
And
too.
you
I'm
really, you know,
Mhm.
I have memories of being like a teenager and listen. There was a great station in New York. It was a public radio station in New York called WBAI. I think it still exists back in the day. And they would have just really interesting off the wall programming. I used to get up early before high school, like at 4 in the morning, and listen to,
That's cool.
people on that station. And it's
So
just like
I
you
would
and the
I
voice,
I would
you
listen to
know,
Larry King's radio show at night.
Larry
I'd
King.
listen. I'd listen to. I'm a big sports guy. Mike and Mike in the morning. Back in the day, they had a good
Oh yeah.
morning show on ESPN. Listened to Dan Patrick, who is an icon. I've not gotten to interview Dan Patrick yet. I got to interview Mike Goldberg, but never Mike Greenberg, and Howard Stern. I saw the mix, and then
The
also
legend.
Sean, and also Sean Hannity. So I would listen to all these different mixtures, and I think I
Sure.
have a little bit of style of all of them.
Forget about it. I
Kind
grew
of.
up in New Jersey, so I was listening to Stern in the 80s when he was on WNBC, like when he was starting out, you know?
Yeah, I was listening in the 90s when I lived to
Yeah.
first get trained as a professional wrestler when I was living in Bricktown, New Jersey. That's where I was getting
Yeah,
trained.
yeah.
I was ended up on all those little beach towns trying to live in one of those efficiencies to go get trained. Then I finally got trained the right way in Marion, Ohio. Okay, so back to Greg has his final question. This is the
Please.
question, James, that kind of you got to be ready. So many celebrities have answered this question. Go ahead with the question, Greg.
All right, hit me.
Before I do, when you listened, did you listen for the full hour?
When I listen to what?
No, Neil. When you listen
Howard
to Larry
Stern.
King,
Oh,
Oh,
Larry
Larry
King.
King. Yeah.
Yeah, he used to always say that. I remember when
Yeah.
I
No,
was a kid watching him
I
at night.
listen to Larry King. I mean, literally, Larry King, I got the best advice my first year in radio at WRCT. And this advice was really interesting. You know what, Neil? You're kind of like Larry King in the fact, because I studied, he read things in the book. He says Larry King just wants to know the talking points and have a conversation with somebody. He doesn't want to know the answers. He just wants to know the talking points, some information. So you learn something from your interview. So you're open to asking that follow-up
oh
question.
yeah, that's
That's
great.
going to be the big follow-up question. Who knew we would talk about these things today? Thank God, then AI is going to put this into a whole format and say, we covered so many topics today, James, and I only planned on talking about media res and Oppenheimer. That's the power of conversation. Good,
Oh,
Greg.
100%.
Yeah.
That's very cool. Well, James, it's been a real pleasure and honor. I appreciate your time.
Oh, my
Uh,
pleasure.
so here's my question, and I ask all of our guests because I'm still growing and learning, just like you are, and I know Neil is, and people who listen, and we want to learn from people who are going and been where we want to be. So tell me, James, what do you feel is the most important thing in life you've ever learned?
Oh my gosh, the big one. That's a big umbrella of a question. I would say, I mean, you talk like this and it sounds like a cliche, but it's true. It's like just, people say follow your dreams. I would say go where your energy is.
Hmm.
Go where your energy is, whatever that means, either in terms of work or just your own interests. It's funny because we're talking about these things that we were drawn to as kids. Neil, you're talking about, being super into radio and you're just drawn to this. And here you are making a living behind a microphone, and I, I mean, I got to say, also, Greg talked about cassettes as a kid. And when I was a kid, I had a little, Panasonic Radio Shack tape recorder with a condenser microphone, and my friends and I would make skits. We'd do little skits on the cassette. And what am I doing now? What's in media res? But a little audio performance like I was doing with my friends
That's
when I was a
awesome.
kid. So, but that's something I was always drawn to, and then my energy just stayed there. It's sort of performing. That kind of creativity. So I think it's just take what you're drawn to and seriously, take it seriously, and you know, it'll either just make life more satisfying, and in some cases, it can lead to a career because you're doing something that you were always drawn to, where again, as I said, where your energy goes. So that would be my advice. Sort of follow your energy, if that's not too
Awesome.
new agey.
No, I
I
like
love
that.
it.
I like it.
I think that's great because I mean, really, that's what you do is follow your energy,
Yeah.
create something. You can create anything. I mean, James, if I was in the days of AI at, let's just say 25, when I started my podcast. Okay, I'm 52. We're going 15 years back. If
Yeah.
I had AI to start, I probably wouldn't be in podcasting because of amazing creativity that's out there now with AI. It's amazing where you can create anything you want when you want. And that's where I think it's an opportunity for anybody to create what they're passionate about more than ever in 2025 compared to ever. That's my take. All right. So
Fair
James,
enough.
where can we follow you on social media and stuff? And where can we check out Media Res first? And then where can we follow you?
Oh yeah, the show. It's as they say, wherever you find your podcasts, and they do have a website, which is it's produced by a production company called Good Story Guild, and they have a website called goodstoryguild.co, and you can find it there. But I think you can also find it, on iTunes and all those places. And then you can find me. I guess I still call it Twitter. I know the he who will not be named it X, but it's still Twitter. So I'm still kind of on there, like with the rest of us who are like clinging to the bars of the Titanic. But I'm just James Urbaniak there. That's the main social media right now. And yeah, I tend to update my account with appearances and stuff that's going on, and links to things. So that's where I am.
Appreciate it, James.
Awesome.
Thanks again. All
But
right,
thank
that
you.
was that. You're welcome. That was the special simulcast of the Neil Haley Show and celebrity interviews live from the Grotto with Greg Hanna. Guys, take care.